Hey guys, Kenny here. I want to talk to you about engaging with parents and winning parents over. As a student ministry, we believe our responsibility is not necessarily to be the primary shepherds in the lives of students. In fact, that's one of the things that I think get youth leaders and youth pastors in trouble in their relationships with parents. And we believe that we are a partner with parents. So if there's a parent who really loves Jesus and they are seeking to do the best they can to shepherd their students, our job is to simply be a resource to those parents, to come alongside those parents and to reinforce what's already being taught in the home. For us to simply be a supplement to what the parents are already doing. Now, with the students that come from homes that maybe the parents don't love Jesus and maybe aren't seeking to shepherd their children, with that student, we're going to play a little bit more of a primary role, obviously, in shepherding that student spiritually. But even in that case, there are extreme cases where parents don't care about their kids and parents are not seeking to help their student at all. But that is the extreme rare case in student ministry. And so even a parent that doesn't love Jesus is looking out for their student. They want what's best. They may not necessarily know how to do that, but they're looking out for the same thing we're looking out for, what's best for their student. So even in that case, we are nothing more than a supplement. We are a resource to the parents in their goal to raise their children to the best of their ability. And so I think when we're engaging with parents, one of the major things that we can do is to project the attitude that we believe that we are a resource to them. I think what youth leaders and youth pastors sometimes get in trouble is when they think they are the leader, they know best, and their way should be. And a lot of parents can feel defensive, and rightfully so. They feel like, well, you're trying to take my kid away, or you're trying to bring division between me and my kid, or you're trying to teach my kid something different. If we believe wholeheartedly that we are nothing more than a supplement and a resource, if we believe that inwardly, whatever you believe is going to bleed through. If I believe that I'm the king and I'm the main guy in their life, then that's going to bleed through, and the parents are going to notice it, and they're not going to respond well to that. They'll get defensive, and that's, if I were a parent, quite frankly, that's exactly how I would respond. But if I truly believe that I am nothing more than a resource and a supplement, then when I engage with a parent and I have conversations with students about their parents, that philosophy that's inside of me will begin to bleed through over the course of time. People will sense Kenny is a resource to me. Parents will feel it, they'll sense that, and they will begin to trust you and trust us as a leadership team the more we seek to be a resource to them in student ministry. As we talk about winning parents over and engaging with parents, there's a couple practical steps that we can take. And they really start long before we even ever have a conversation with a parent. Oftentimes we have opportunities to engage with our students in such a way that it gets back to the home. So I'll give you a couple examples. Whenever I'm having a conversation with a student, I'm always talking in a way to reinforce whatever their parents are teaching them at home. And so I'll ask students on a regular basis, hey, tell me about some of the things you talked about with your dad or with your mom, or what are some things going on? Anything crazy happened at home this week? Anything really fun happened? What kind of conversations did you have? I have those sorts of, and I ask them things, and I'm trying to draw out what are the things your parents are teaching you. In fact, one of the biggest ways I often do that is I ask students, hey, where any fights happen at home this week? Any conflict or anything that maybe your parents, you've been driving you crazy? And from the parent and from the student perspective, my parents drive me crazy. But really, what's really happening is the parent is trying to reinforce something that is good, and the student is being defensive to it. And so when I find that out, if a student tells me, oh, my dad's, being mean, he took away my cell phone. Well, why did he take away your cell phone? I don't know. He said I was texting too much. Okay, so that's a clue to me that this kid is not being responsible with his text messaging. And so now I have a choice to make. I can either engage with him about how wrong his dad is, or I can connect with him about how his dad is right. And I say to that student, hey, we all need to be responsible. I put myself in the same category. We should all be responsible with our text messaging. In fact, this is a real life example. And not too long after, I had a student come back to me and say to me, oh yeah, I told my parents about that. And I later had a conversation with the parent, and the parent came and said to me, hey, thanks for challenging my son on the thing with his cell phone. Because I had a conversation with the student that reinforced what the parent said. The student goes home and said, yeah, well, Kenny said this. In that moment, I've now won that parent over without even ever having a conversation. In fact, the very first conversation I ever had with that parent was a parent approaching me to say thank you for reinforcing something that I had said. And so when I'm talking with a student, I'm talking to reinforce what their parents are teaching them at home that are positive, and I'm talking to be parroted. This may sound manipulative to some people, but I feel it's strategic. I say specific things, and I try to craft my words in such a way that the student can grab them and literally repeat it. And so multiple times throughout student ministry, I've heard parents come back and say to me, oh yeah, my son or my daughter, they said that you said this. And oftentimes it'll be verbatim what I said to the student, because I crafted it in such a way that it will stick. And so recently I had a conversation with a student who wasn't doing so good in school, and he was really being lazy. He's cutting class. He's not really working hard. He comes on Wednesday night and he worships God and he raises his hands and he talks about the Bible, but yet he's being a slacker in school. And I had a conversation. I looked him right in the eyes and I said, you know, Jesus would prefer that you not show up here on Wednesday night and go home and work really hard at school. He goes, that would be the best form of worship you could offer Jesus. A couple weeks later, I had a conversation with that parent who looked at me and said, hey, my son said that you said that the best form of worship he could give is to do good in school. You know what? He's turned his grades around. He went from being a C, D student to having mostly A's and B's with one struggle in Spanish, being able to speak Spanish. I'm going to step in and help him with that because we want to be a resource to the lives of students. So when you're talking with students, reinforce what a parent is seeking to teach them and talk in such a way that when that student repeats your words, you're going to win that parent over without even being in the home. You know, when we are having conversations with parents, it's key that we do so in a way that we can win them over. And so a great opportunity for this is during our church services or before and after our weekend gatherings. We will often have parents and families come to church with their students, and I have opportunities to connect with them. I so often seek out parents on the weekends more than I do students. I'll connect with our students, and I love them a lot, but I connect with them throughout the week. I connect with them on Wednesday nights. I don't often have a lot of times to connect with parents. And so during weekend gatherings, I seek out parents before and after. Much like I do with students on a Wednesday night before and after our youth gatherings, I do the same thing with parents before and after our weekend gatherings. And I often will attend multiple gatherings looking for specific parents. When I engage with them, I'm looking to have specific conversations. One of the biggest things I try to do when I have a conversation with a parent is to talk about things other than their kids. I think a lot of youth leaders and youth pastors can get in trouble when they meet a parent and all they talk about is the kid. The kid becomes the focus of that relationship. And what you do is you're projecting to the parent, all I know about is teenagers. And so the parent may trust you to a certain extent. They may trust you to preach to their kid on a Wednesday night. They may trust you to keep their kid safe going on a particular trip. But they may not trust you with anything beyond that. And really, if you're going to be effective in student ministry, you got to be trusted beyond just, can I keep your kid safe when I take them, to a ballpark? And so what I try to do is, one of the major things that I do is I try to look for parents, have conversations with them with things that are real life. So whether that's their work life, their marriage, politics, theology, economics, job, history. I mean, there's a whole host of things that I talk about, that I engage with parents, because that's what they're talking about in their everyday lives. Sometimes sports, sometimes their favorite hobbies. Whatever it is, I'm looking for inlets to have conversation with parents on a very adult level. And so I could be having conversation with someone that is 10, 20, 30 years older than me, but I'm having conversation on their terms and things that they care about in such a way that I'm engaging them to win them over. And they go, this guy Kenny, he's an adult. He can be trusted. And what I begin to do is I have those conversations. I begin to allow my attitude of being a resource to begin to bleed through. And that comes through. If I really believe that I'm a supplement and a resource to the parent, then that will bleed through as I have conversations. And then I look for opportunities to say those sorts of things. There are certain lingo that I use when I talk to parents. I'm looking for ways to interject them into the conversations on a regular basis. I say things like, hey, I want you to know I'm on your team. I never say we're on the same team. I say I'm on your team. And I make it very clear, you're the leader in your kid's life. I'm simply a member of the team that you are leading, and I'm here to be a resource to you. In fact, I'll say those sorts of things on a regular. I'll say those exact words. Hey, I want you to know, I'm nothing more than like a vitamin supplement. All right, I'm not the main meal. You're the main meal, and I love being a part of that. I will often thank parents. I connect with a parent. I say, hey, thanks for letting me hang out with Billy on Friday night. Thanks for letting me take Matt and those guys to the movies last week. It was so great. Thank you for letting me be a part of your life. Thank you for letting me be a resource to you. One of the final elements when you're really engaging with parents is having some beneath the surface conversations and maybe even breaking some tension that could exist. Whenever I engage with a parent, if I've had some quality conversations with their kid, I try to relay it back to them. I mean, you'd never want a parent to feel like my kid is confiding in someone and keeping secrets from me with another adult. It can breed a lot of distrust. And so what I will often do is, without betraying the confidence, if the student maybe for some reason didn't want me to share it, I will have conversations with the parent in a way that lets the parent know that I'm wanting to have transparent conversation and wanting to be a resource. Again, I'm not over here doing my own thing, me and their kid over here, I am stepping into the lives of the family, and I want to be a resource to them if they want and need that. And so if I have, let's say, a conversation with a student who's dealing with some shame or some guilt in something, I'll sometimes go to that parent and say, hey, I wanted to connect with you, just to let you know, I talked to so-and-so, and they've really been dealing with some guilt and just, feeling guilty on this, and I just want you to know that, man, Jesus is doing some really cool things there. We had some great conversations, and so the parent knows, okay, maybe my kid's not talking to me, but at least he's talking to someone, and he's talking to someone that's willing to come back and connect with me. So it's not just talking to someone out in the world or out there in society that's going to keep him a secret and give him bad advice. And I'll come back to the parent, I'll often say, hey, so-and-so came to me, they asked me for advice, I want to let you know, here's the advice I gave them. And I'll have those sorts of conversations as often as possible. Now, there's definitely a fine line between betraying the confidence of a student who sometimes wants to share things that it's just they feel uncomfortable with their parents knowing about. There are some moments where that's appropriate to maybe keep it complete in confidence. If you're unsure where that line is, just come and talk to us. Come and talk to one of the leadership team members or maybe an experienced person in youth ministry and bring the specific situation and allow someone else to help you determine where that fine line is. But the general rule of thumb, most of the time, if you're speaking generically and ambiguously, you can go back to a parent and let that parent know, hey, I want to keep you aware of a situation. I'll mention, I had this conversation, here's what Jesus did, or here's a conversation we had. So that when the parent is frustrated when that kid at home, there's at least a seed that Jesus is doing something. I've heard parents say, man, it just feels like I'm losing them, and nothing's ever going to happen. And I go, actually, there are some things happening. It just is going to be a really, really slow process. You can encourage the parent in that way. Some of the other things you can do when you engage in that manner is you can break some tension. Sometimes there's great tension. I've had moments where students are just doing stupid things. Often schoolwork is a huge part of it. They're not doing their schoolwork, they're being lazy. Parents frustrated, and rightfully so, and the student's just being lazy, and there's this tension in the home there. So the student's coming to me as someone they can trust saying, I don't know, I don't care about my Spanish homework, I don't care about my algebra, whatever it may be. And I can then step in and I can have a conversation with the parent that says, hey, so-and-so, I know he's struggling in school, I want to let you know I'm going to talk to him about that. I want to let you know that I talked to him and I challenged him. And sometimes parents don't know how to bring up a conversation. It can be awkward, totally understandable. And so what I do is I want to make it easy for them to have a conversation. I visualize them being in a minivan together, and I want to make it easy for a parent to say, hey, I know you maybe had a conversation with Kenny, or I want the student to say, hey, I talked to my youth leader James, or I talked to Joel, and he told me I should say this. And I often will coach students and give them the words to say. Hey, when you see your dad, say this. I talked to Joel, and he told me that I should say sorry, so sorry. Yeah, and that's as good as it's going to get for the teenager. But I coach them, and I try to do that in such a way where it's going to maybe break the tension and the awkwardness that could exist between a parent and student in some of those difficult moments in parenting. I try to build a bridge and make it easier for the parent. I'll often offer up prayer. If I connect with a parent, I often will look, hey, is there anything I can pray for? Can I pray for you right now? I want you to know that I am praying for these things. Maybe it's not always conflict between the student. Maybe it's just generic things going on. I got a student that I'm investing a lot in right now whose mom's really been struggling financially. And dad's out of the picture for a season, and just really been some frustrating moments there. And so I got a chance to connect with the mom and just say, hey, I want to let you know I talked to your son, and he told me about some things going on. I want you to know that I am praying for you. What can we do for you? I got a job interview coming up. Can we help you with that? Can we get you a ride? Those sorts of things. I had another student who needed to get some driving hours in. He's got to drive so many hours before he can take his driver's test. And he told me that. So I went to the parent and said, hey, I know there's some difficult situations going on. Can I take him driving? Would you mind doing that? I'm making offers to be a resource in a practical way. Recently, I offered to have dinner with a parent. Hey, a parent came to me and said, I've got two kids, I'm having some major conflict. Well, I don't know what to do. I say, hey, can I come over and have dinner and just hang out at your home and bring what the conversations we've had maybe on a Wednesday night or outside into the home. So often teenagers are willing to be themselves out in the movie theater or school or whatever, and then they come home and they isolate themselves from the family. And maybe I can step in and be a resource to that family in that way. So there's a lot of ways when I'm engaging with a parent, I am looking to offer them what they need. Again, I'm not saying, here's what you should do, here's what you need. I'm simply coming to them saying, hey, what can I do? What do you need? Or I've heard of this as a need. Can I help you in some way? Can I pray for you? Can I step in? Can I have conversation with you in such a way that lets you know that you can trust me and I want to serve you? And so I look for ways to do that on a regular basis. Whether it be Wednesday night, parents are coming to pick up their student after a gathering. I'll try to hang out sometimes in a lobby or out there and try to connect with parents. Sometimes on social media, I try to often engage with parents and try to do some of these things with parents. Whether it be weekend gatherings, I try to, as often as possible, engage with parents. If I go over a student's house, I do so when the parent's there, and I show up, and I go and I spend a chunk of time with that parent, having some FaceTime, doing some of these things. Again, my goal is to step in and say to the parent, number one, I'm on your team. I care about your family. I want to be a resource to you. It's not my idea what I want to do, it's what you want and how I can be a resource to that. And secondly, I'm looking for windows and opportunities where I can say, I can help you with that. Would you mind if I step in and be a resource to you in these specific areas because I love you and I love your student. Student ministry, in a lot of ways, is family ministry, not teenage ministry. Student ministry is, how can I help this student love Jesus more by being a resource to their family? And if we engage with parents in a way that with that attitude in mind, if we engage with parents in a way to win them over, to reinforce what they're teaching at home, to really let them know that we love them, then we're going to win parents over, and we're going to be way, way, way more successful in student ministry than if we had tried to do it of our own volition without parents.